Here is the recap of all 5 seasons of Stranger Things. The series takes place in Hawkins, Indiana, in 1983. We are shown a mysterious laboratory where a scientist, fleeing from someone, was killed by some kind of monster. At the same time, children are playing a board game in the basement of a house. These are Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will. When they go home, Will is attacked by some kind of monster. He tries to defend himself, but in the end, he just disappears. In the morning, his mother Joyce and older brother Jonathan, not finding Will at home, begin to sound the alarm. Joyce goes to the police station and tells everything to the local sheriff, Jim Hopper, after which he begins an investigation. Meanwhile, a girl in a hospital gown comes out of the forest and makes her way to a diner. The owner of the diner finds her, feeds her, and calls social services. The girl doesn't talk much, calls herself 11, and we see her turn off the fan with her mind. A woman arrives, introducing herself as a social services worker, kills the diner owner, and tries to find 11. However, the girl manages to escape and is found in the woods by the main characters, who have gone in search of Will. They take her home, and the next day they learn that bad people are hunting her. To hide 11 from his parents, Michael locks her in a closet for a while, and a short flashback shows how she was locked in a dark chamber in the laboratory. Lucas wants to tell the parents about the girl, but she uses her powers to close the door. 11 explains to the main characters that Will is on the so-called Upside Down and is being hunted by a monster. Michael's sister Nancy and her friend Barbara are invited to a party at Steve's house, Nancy's boyfriend. At the party, Barbara is kidnapped by a monster, and Jonathan, Will's brother, who happens to be there, photographs Nancy and the moment of Barbara's disappearance. Later, we see Barbara trying to escape, but she fails and is dragged back by the monster. Sometime later, Steve and Nancy find out that Jonathan photographed them. We are also constantly shown the bad guys and Dr. Brenner, who seems to be in charge of everything here. First, they approach an unknown slimy substance in chemical protection suits. Then, they listen in on the townspeople's conversations to find 11, and then they search the backyard where Will disappeared. Later, in the laboratory, scientists try to pass through the slimy portal. They send a man there, but he never returns. Will's mother Joyce tries to contact her missing son by phone, and the lights in the house begin to flicker, leading her to Will's room. Suddenly, one of the walls begins to move, and strange figures appear on it. Joyce panics and runs out of the house, but then returns. She soon realizes that she can communicate with her son using light. She creates an alphabet out of fairy lights on the wall. Will tells his mother to run away. At that moment, the monster begins to crawl out of the wall again. From time to time, we are shown Odie's memories, where she is asked to crush a Coca-Cola can or kill a cat. She refuses to kill a cat, so they drag her into a dark room. But before the guards close the door, the girl kills them with telekinesis. We are also shown how, in the past, the girl was locked in a deprivation chamber and used her powers to eavesdrop on the conversations of spies. While combing the forest in search of Will, Sheriff Hopper finds a piece of fabric in a pipe leading to Hawkins' laboratory. He goes there, but finds nothing. However, Hopper notices that the video recording from the night the boy disappeared is not real. He then begins to suspect Dr. Brenner. Later, the police find Will's body in a canyon, but Joyce believes that it is not her son, as he had a mole on his arm. The boys are angry with 11 because they think she is lying to them, but she proves to them that Will is alive by communicating with him on the radio. The children decide to disguise 11 as a normal girl by giving her a wig and a dress. They go to school to use the bigger radio station, and on the way, 11 protects Michael from school bullies. At the same time, Joyce hears her son at home, tears off the wallpaper, and sees the boy there. The rest of the kids, with the help of 11 and the radio station, hear Will and Joyce talking. Nancy questions Jonathan about the photographs, and the two begin their investigation, suspecting that the monster really exists. Together, they begin hunting for it. At night, Nancy finds a small portal to the Upside Down, climbs through it, and discovers the monster, but eventually manages to escape. The kids go home, where Steve catches them, and the next day Jonathan is arrested for fighting with Steve. Hopper also begins to suspect that Will is not actually dead. He performs an autopsy himself and realizes that it is just a plastic doll. The sheriff goes to Hawkins' laboratory, where he discovers the room where the child was kept, as well as the portal to the Upside Down. He is eventually caught and regains consciousness at home, where he discovers that listening devices are hidden everywhere. Hopper goes to Joyce and tells her what happened. Together, they realize that it was not Will who was being held in the lab, but some other child. Meanwhile, the children try to find a portal to the Upside Down. Elle realizes that this will take them back to the laboratory where she was held captive and tries to stop them. This causes the children to argue, and Lucas leaves the group, while 11, frightened, runs away. Michael and Dustin try to find her, but run into some school bullies. At the last moment, 11 saves Michael, who almost crashes after falling off a cliff. At that moment, the bad guys realize where the girl is hiding and send a capture team. Lucas finds out about this, warns his friends, and they manage to escape. At the police station, Hopper learns about the monster from Jonathan, and finally, all the main characters meet and share information. They come up with a plan to contact Will. In the school gym, they create an improvised deprivation chamber. 11 finds Barbara, who is already dead, and Will, who is still alive. Hopper and Joyce go to the lab, where they are caught, but in the end, the sheriff negotiates with Dr. Brenner. After that, he and Joyce go to the Upside Down to find Will. Meanwhile, Nancy and Jonathan set a trap for the monster, joined by Steve, who has repented his actions. They almost defeat the monster, but it manages to escape. The bad guys, tipped off by Hopper, come for the children hiding in the school, but there they encounter the monster, which quickly kills everyone. Although Dr. Brenner's death is not shown. 11, with her last bit of strength, destroys the monster, but disappears herself. Joyce and Hopper find Will, and everyone else is safe and sound. A month later, we see Hopper leaving food for 11 in a special box in the woods. And in the final scenes of the season, we see Will spitting out some kind of slime in the bathroom and finding himself on the Upside Down for a few seconds. This is the end of the first season. A year has passed since last season's events, and everything is going on as usual. Nancy is dating Steve. Jonathan has become even more withdrawn and is taking care of his brother. Their mother Joyce starts dating Bob Newby, an electronics salesman. And Will, after returning from the Upside Down, finds himself there from time to time and begins to see some kind of huge, mysterious creature. When they turn to the scientists at the laboratory where the portal to the Upside Down is located, they are told that it is just post-traumatic stress disorder and are sent home. We are transported to Pittsburgh, where we are introduced to another character named Kaylee, who has a tattoo of 8 on her arm. She also has supernatural abilities, but they are different from those of 11. She makes people see whatever she wants them to see. Mike, Dustin, Lucas, and Will learn that a cool girl named Max has moved to their town. She skateboards and plays video games. Lucas and Dustin fall in love with her and, trying to chat her up, invite her to hang out on Halloween. Mike is unhappy that they invited a girl to join their group and believes that no one can replace 11. Meanwhile, Elle is living with Jim Hopper in a shack in the woods, hiding from the special services who are still looking for her. We are shown that after she destroyed the Demogorgon a year ago, she was thrown into the Upside Down. but she found a way out and wandered in the woods for a long time, where Jim found her and took her in. The girl dreams of going outside, but Jim won't let her for her own safety. After a while, they have a quarrel, and Elle finds documents in the cellar that shed light on her past. Using her abilities, she finds her mother and runs away from the shack to go looking for her. Meanwhile, Dustin finds a slug in the trash can and starts feeding it. This is the same slug that Will spat out at the end of Season 1. Dustin shows it to his friends, but at that moment, it grows hind limbs and runs away from them. The kids decide that it needs to be killed, as it clearly came from the Upside Down. Dustin finds it, but doesn't kill it. Instead, he takes it home and continues to feed it. We are also introduced to Max's stepbrother Billy, who acts like a total jerk to everyone. Nancy can't accept that she has to lie to Barbara's parents, who lost their daughter to the monster last season. She wants to tell them everything, but Steve disagrees, as the government could easily kill them if they tell anyone about what happened last year. This causes them to argue. After that, Nancy and Jonathan decide to somehow bring the guilty government to justice. They secretly record a conversation with the head of the laboratory, Sam Owens. Then they go to former journalist and conspiracy theorist Murray Bauman. Together, they edit the recordings to make them more believable and send them to various newspapers. Then they return home. During this adventure, they also fall in love with each other. Farmers turn to Jim Hopper because their crops have been destroyed by some kind of disease. Jim realizes that this infection is connected to the Upside Down and asks scientists from the lab to investigate. Will has another seizure and ends up in the Upside Down, but this time the monster catches up with him and possesses Will. The boy begins to see strange images and, trying to explain them to his mother, draws a bunch of pictures, which she lays out around the house, forming a map of tunnels. Hopper figures out where to look for them and digs a passage there on his own. He goes down, but the roots entangle him and he finds himself trapped. Will senses this and tells his mother and Mike. Joyce asks her boyfriend Bob for help, and they rescue Jim. The military and scientists arrive and try to burn the tunnels, but this causes Will to scream in pain. In the laboratory, the scientists realize that the boy is somehow connected to the tunnels and the portal, and they also learn that because they burned the portal to prevent it from expanding, it began to expand underground, which is why the tunnels appeared. Meanwhile, Eleven finds her mother, who has been sitting in a chair for many years, muttering the same words over and over. The girl climbs into her head and sees her past, how her child was taken from her. Trying to find her, she breaks into a laboratory and kills a guard. In the room, she sees 2 children, but before she can save them, she is locked up, and to prevent her from talking too much, they run electricity through her brain, turning her into a vegetable and turning her life into a nightmare where she relives these moments over and over again. Eleven learns that her real name is Jane and sets out to find the second girl. Eventually, she finds her, a young woman named Coley, who makes a living by robbing people with a group of misfits. Coley teaches Jane that if she gets really angry, she can strengthen her abilities. Coley wants to use 11 to find the people who tormented them as children, but when they finally find one of the scientists, Jane cannot bring herself to kill him. Later, the girl senses that her friends are in danger and goes home. Meanwhile, Dustin's creature, which he named D'Artagnan, or Darth for short, continues to grow and eats the cat while he is away from home. Dustin locks it in the basement and asks Steve to kill it, but the monster escapes. Meanwhile, Lucas tells Max about what happened a year ago, and they join Dustin and Steve. The main characters try to lure Darth and burn him, but it turns out that there are many such creatures and the children flee. The monsters almost catch them, but something distracts the dogs and they run away. They run into the tunnels. At this time, the creature inside Will begins to consume him more and more, and gives the military false information, causing them to fall into a trap in the tunnels. The creatures get out into the laboratory and begin to kill the scientists. The main characters manage to escape, but Bob dies saving everyone. The main characters decide to interrogate the possessed Will, hoping that he will help them destroy the Mind Flayer, as they have named the enormous creature. Will manages to send a message to his friends in Morse code, telling them to close the gate so that the Mind Flayer's influence will disappear. The spread of the infection will stop, and the dogs will die. The children realize that if they close the gate while the creature is still controlling Will, the boy will die. Then, Joyce figures out how to drive it out of her son's body, using heat. They surround him with heaters and the Mind Flayer crawls out of him. By this time, 11 arrives and they return to the lab with Jim to close the portal. The other children decide to help them distract the monster dogs and set fire to the tunnels. In the end, Jane closes the portal. After some time, life in the town returns to normal. Laboratory director Sam Owens gives Jim Hopper Jane's birth certificate with his surname. The laboratory itself is shut down due to information leaked by Nancy and Jonathan. After a while, the children go to the evening prom. There, Lucas dances with Max. Dustin is upset because he also liked her, but Nancy decides to dance with him out of pity. Then Jane appears, and Mike invites her to the dance floor. But on the upside down, the Mind Flayer has not yet been defeated. This is the end of the second season. After the events of the previous season, the evil Russians also try to open a portal to the upside down in their laboratories, but for some reason they are unable to do so. They realize that the only way to open the passage is to create their own laboratory, where the passage has already been opened. A year later, they secretly built an underground complex in the city of Hawkins, beneath the local shopping mall. Let's return to our main characters. Jane, also known as 11, is dating Mike. Lucas is dating Max, a girl from last season. Dustin returns from summer camp and tells his friends that he also has a girlfriend named Susie. And Will, who apparently has not yet reached puberty, is jealous of his friends' significant others and tries in every way to win their attention. Jim Hopper doesn't like that Michael spends too much time with his adopted daughter, Jane. He asks Joyce for advice, and she suggests that he calmly tell the children how he feels. But, overcome with emotion, he instead threatens Michael that he will forbid him from seeing 11. The boy, frightened, distances himself from Jane, and they break up for a while. The Russians, testing a device to open a passage to the upside down, awaken the Mind Flayer from last season, and it begins to take shape in the real world, devouring nearby rodents. Nancy and Jonathan, who work for a local newspaper, decide on their own initiative to check out the rumors about rabid rats and begin their own investigation. Meanwhile, Max's brother Billy gets into an accident near the place where the monster is beginning to form, and the creature takes control of the guy's mind. Soon, Billy begins to bring more and more people to his master, and after a while, they become an entire army. Dustin wants to prove to his friends that his girlfriend is real and not imaginary, and tries to contact her using a radio station he built over the summer. By the way, Susie does exist, and Dustin does contact her by radio at the end of the season, and she helps them in their hour of need. But without waiting for a response, his friends leave, and he accidentally stumbles upon a recording of Russian speech and realizes that they are Russian spies. He goes to Steve, who works at an ice cream shop with a new character named Robin. Dustin asks him to help him decipher the recording, and soon they realize that there is an underground complex beneath the shopping center where they work. With the help of Lucas's sister Erica, they make their way inside, where they discover an underground laboratory and a device that opens a portal to the upside down. Steve and Robin are taken prisoner, but Dustin and Erica rescue them, and together they escape from the bunker. Joyce, as usual, discovers some strange things happening around her. and asks Jim for help, as she suspects that something is still going on in the laboratory from previous seasons. When they go there, they find nothing, but stumble upon another clue. Soon, they find a secret power station in one of the abandoned houses and a Russian scientist named Alexei, who does not speak English. They have to run away because an evil Russian spy is chasing them. They go to Murray Bauman because he is the only one of Jim's acquaintances who knows Russian. Alexei tells the main characters that the Russians are planning to open a portal to the Upside Down and explains how to destroy the facility under the shopping center. Soon, the main characters return to the city, where the evil Russian spy kills Alexei. Meanwhile, 11 hangs out with Max and for fun uses her abilities to spy on people she knows. She discovers that Billy is acting strangely and begins to suspect him of having ties to the Upside Down. Will also senses that the Mind Flayer is active and tells his friends about it. The kids team up, decide to catch Billy and question him, locking him in the sauna since the monster is afraid of heat. The main characters learn that the Mind Flayer has taken control of the man, but he breaks free and runs away from them. Soon, Nancy and Jonathan, conducting their own investigation, realize that the case involves monsters from the Upside Down and join the main characters. Together, they try to find Billy, but discover that there is more than one infected person, and together they form a monster out of bones and flesh. 11 tries to locate the creature's center of mass by remotely scanning Billy's memories, but the Mind Flayer was expecting this, and, on the contrary, learned the location of the main characters. He attacks the children with all his might and injures 11, causing her to lose her superpowers. The main characters manage to escape and head to the mall, as Dustin asks them for help over the radio. All the main characters meet at the mall. Harper, Joyce, and Bauman also arrive on time. They come up with a plan. Erica and Dustin head to the radio station, where they can provide communication for everyone. The other children help 11 hold back the monster. The adults go down to the Russians' laboratory and destroy the device, closing the passage to the Upside Down. Hopper heroically saves the day but disappears in the explosion, and the Mind Flayer dies in this world when the passage closes. By this time, the US government arrives and cleans up everything that remains. 3 months later, life is getting back to normal. Joyce takes 11, who still hasn't regained her abilities, under her wing and leaves town with her children, Will and Jonathan. After the credits, we see that the evil Russians in Kamchatka are still experimenting with the Upside Down and feeding Demogorgon with prisoners. This is the end of the 3rd season. 8 months after the events of the previous season, Joyce, Will, and Jonathan moved to California. 11, whom Joyce took under her wing after Hopper's disappearance, also lives with them. Elle still hasn't regained her abilities, and her classmates bully her at school. In Hawkins, Dustin, Lucas, and Mike join the Hellfire Club, where they and other teenagers play the tabletop game Dungeons & Dragons. The club is run by the eccentric Eddie Munson, but Mike soon flies off on vacation to California to visit 11, and Lucas starts playing basketball and distances himself from his friends. Eddie then demands that a replacement be found for the club, and it turns out to be Erica, Lucas's sister. Max also distances himself from his friends due to Billy's death in the previous season. In fact, many people in Hawkins have experienced loss, as the Mind Flayer killed a huge number of people. The head cheerleader at Hawkins High School suffers from hallucinations, constantly seeing antique clocks and hearing their chimes, as well as frightening images from the past. She wants to get rid of this somehow, and since the school psychiatrist is not helping, she goes to Eddie Munson, who, according to rumors, can get hold of various substances. When she arrives at his house, the cheerleader freezes and sees a mutilated human figure attacking her in her hallucinations. Meanwhile, in reality, Eddie witnesses the cheerleader rise into the air, after which all her bones break and her eyes pop out. The guy runs away from the house, and the neighbors call the police. Of course, Eddie is the first suspect, but the cops start questioning all of the cheerleader's acquaintances, which is how her boyfriend finds out that Eddie is most likely to blame for everything. As the captain of the basketball team, he gathers his friends and starts looking for him. Max, who lives next door to Eddie, saw him running away from his house after a cheerleader came to visit him and tells Dustin about it. Together, they go to Steve for help, who is still friends with Robin, and they work at a video rental store. Soon, they find Eddie in an abandoned house and, after learning his story, tell him about the Upside Down and everything that has happened to them over the course of 3 seasons. They realize that the cheerleader was not killed by the Mind Flayer, but by some new entity they call Vecna. It seems to cast a curse on its target, causing the person to slowly go mad, and then, about a week later, Vecna comes for them and kills them. Nancy, Mike's sister, who works for a local newspaper, goes to the scene of the cheerleader's murder and begins to suspect that the Upside Down is involved. Talking to Eddie's relative, she learns that similar murders took place in the 1950s. Victor Creel moved to Hawkins with his family, and after a while he went mad, broke his relatives' bones, and gouged out their eyes. He was then sent to a mental hospital where he remains to this day. Upon learning this, Nancy finds the other main characters and joins them. Meanwhile, Vecna kills again, and before dying, the victim, like the cheerleader, saw hallucinations of clocks and creepy memories. The military arrives in Hawkins, as any suspicious event in the town is most likely connected to the Upside Down. The new leadership believes that 11 is the source of all the trouble and begins searching for her to kill her. They find Sam Owens, who was the last person to see the girl, but he lies to them, saying he doesn't know where she is. We are transported back 8 months and shown that after Jim Hopper sacrificed himself to save the others, he survived and was found by the Russians. Hopper was secretly sent to a labor camp in Kamchatka, where, after several months, he found a corrupt guard named Dmitri, and, with his help, sent a package with a message to Joyce in America. Soon, she receives this package, on which she sees Russian words. The woman is afraid to open it, so she calls Murray Bauman, who knows Russian. He flies to California as soon as possible, and together they unpack the parcel and find a message from Hopper. They call the phone number provided, and the same guard, Dmitri, tells the main characters to take a large sum of money and fly to Alaska, which is exactly what they do. Just then, Mike arrives in California to spend his summer vacation with Elle. They take Will with them, and the 3 go rollerblading. Once again, Jane is bullied by teenagers and, unable to take it anymore, she beats up her classmate, seriously injuring her. The police arrest Jane, as her guardian Joyce has flown to Alaska. However, on the way, Elle is intercepted by the Secret Service. Sam Owens tells her that the military considers her a threat and wants to kill her. He also tells her that strange things are happening again in Hawkins. He suggests that Elle go with him and regain her lost powers to help her friends in Hawkins, who may be in danger. Elle agrees and is taken to a secret laboratory. Mike, Will, and Jonathan remain at home under the supervision of special agents from Sam Owens. Soon, soldiers break into their apartment and kill the guards. After that, the main characters escape in the car of Jonathan's friend Argyle, to whom they tell everything. Having previously received a strange phone number from their guards, they call it and discover that there is a robot on the other end. They go to Susie, Dustin's friend from the previous season, as she is knowledgeable about computers, and with her help, they find out where 11 is currently located. After that, they go after her. In Hawkins, the captain of the basketball team organizes a hunt for Eddie and drags Lucas, who also plays on their team, into it. Lucas quickly runs away from them and warns his friends, joining them. However, the angry teenagers find Eddie's hiding place and chase after him. Eddie tries to escape from them on a boat, and two guys follow him. At that moment, Vecna attacks again and kills one of the basketball players right in front of the team captain. Soon, he tells the whole town, which is already in an uproar, that it's all the fault of the devilish cult that Eddie and the other teenagers belong to. Let me remind you that their gaming club is called Hellfire. After that, half the town starts hunting Eddie. Meanwhile, the main characters try to gather as much information as possible about Vecna and her victims. Max remembers that the cheerleader went to the school psychologist, and they sneak into her office. There, they learn that she had psychological trauma, just like the second victim. They realize that Vecna preys on the weak-minded. After that, Max herself begins to see hallucinations and hear the ringing of that very old clock, and soon falls into a trance and is hunted by Vecna himself, who is trying to kill her. Meanwhile, Nancy and Robin go to the mental hospital to see Victor Creel, who tells them that his entire family was actually killed by some kind of demon in the past, and he managed to escape by chance because he heard his favorite music during his hallucinations. At that moment, the other main characters learn via radio how to break Vecna's curse and put headphones with her favorite song on Max, after which she manages to escape from the monster in her mind. The main characters try to understand why Vecna attacked in the past and disappeared for more than 30 years. Max reports that when the monster was chasing her, she saw not her own memories but his. After that, she draws pictures of what she saw, and the main characters understand where Vecna is, namely in Victor Krell's house. When they arrive there, they do not find the monster and realize that it is in the same house but on the upside down. The teenagers realize that they need to get to the other side somehow, and soon accidentally find a portal that formed at the site of one of the basketball players' deaths. That is, at the bottom of the lake. Steve is dragged there by a tentacle, and Nancy, Eddie, and Robin go after him. There, they are attacked by a huge flock of flying creatures, but in the end, they manage to escape through another portal in the trailer where the cheerleader died. However, Vecna enters Nancy's mind and tells her who he really is, but I'll talk about that a little later. For now, let's go back in time a little. 11 arrives at a secret base, where she meets Martin Brenner, who turns out not to have died in the first season. Owens informs Al that Brenner has developed a special program that can not only restore her lost powers, but also multiply them many times over. However, the choice is hers. Although Jane hates her so-called father with all her heart, she agrees to the experiment. Over the course of several days, with the help of a special device, her memories, which she had forgotten for some reason, are restored. It turns out that in the past, there were many children in Brenner's laboratory, and 11 was bullied by teenagers with serial numbers 2, 3, 4, and so on. They envied her because Brenner considered her special. A guy named Henry, who worked there, helped the girl and even taught her how to use her powers. Soon, he even suggested that they escape, but to do so, he asked 11 to remove a special capsule from him that was suppressing his powers. After the capsule was removed, Henry killed everyone in the lab, including the children. 11 wants to stop him, and he tells her the truth about who he really is. It turns out that he is the son of Victor Creel, the man who came to Hawkins in the 1950s. Back then, little Henry began to feel that he had superpowers and started terrorizing his family and then killed them all. However, he overestimated his abilities and lost consciousness when he tried to kill his father, which is why Victor survived. At that moment, Brenner found Henry, took him to a secret laboratory where he began to study him and gave him serial number 1. And then, using his DNA, he created other children. After hearing the story, little 11 overpowers Henry and sends him to the Upside Down, thus creating the first portal there. Once on the other side, lightning strikes Henry's body, disfiguring him, after which he turns into Vecna. Upon learning this, Jane comes to her senses and wants to go to Hawkins, as her friends are in danger. At that moment, the military attacks the lab, wanting to kill 11, and the base is evacuated. While trying to escape, Brenner is mortally wounded, but the girl manages to destroy her pursuers, after which her father confesses that he did it all for her. By this time, Mike, Will, Jonathan, and Argyle arrive at the scene. They take Elle and drive away. In Hawkins, Nancy tells the others who Vecna really is and informs them that he is going to open a huge portal, and to do so, he needs to kill one more person. After that, the main characters come up with a plan to destroy Vecna. Max will distract the monster, as he will want to finish her off. Dustin and Eddie will serve as bait for the flying creatures. Meanwhile, Nancy, Robin, and Steve will set Vecna on fire, as he will be in a trance and therefore defenseless while he is tormenting Max. 11 uses her abilities to learn about the main character's plan and wants to help them somehow, but they are too far away. However, she realizes that she can enter Max's mind and help her fight Vecna there. The main characters begin to act, but everything goes wrong, and even with 11's help, they cannot resist the villain, who then begins to win. Let's go back a little. Joyce and Murray arrive in Alaska, where they meet with a smuggler, Dimitri's friend, to whom they owe money for Hopper's escape. However, the smuggler decides to outsmart everyone, calls the KGB, tells them that Hopper is planning to escape, and betrays his accomplice Dimitri. He also drugs Joyce and Murray and takes them to the USSR to hand them over to the KGB. However, they manage to escape and break into the prison. There, they witness Jim, Dimitri, and other guilty prisoners being sent to be eaten by the Demogorgon from the Upside Down, which for some reason is also being held in this prison. In the end, through their joint efforts, the main characters manage to hide in a laboratory where the Russians are experimenting on creatures from the Upside Down. After calling America, the main characters learn what is happening in Hawkins and decide to help their children from here by killing all the creatures here. Roughly speaking, the Upside Down has a collective mind, and if you damage it here, it hurts it everywhere. Overall, they kill the monsters, which weakens Vecna just as he is about to win. Mike confesses his love to 11, which gives her even more strength, after which she attacks Vecna again. Vecna tells her that after Jane sent him to the Upside Down, he wandered around and encountered a certain force, the very Mind Flayer. But it turns out that Vecna was controlling him all along. At this moment, Eddie sacrifices himself to distract the flying creatures and dies. Nancy, Steve, and Robin, now freed, set fire to the villain, and his physical embodiment dies. However, Max dies from her injuries, and a huge crack forms in Hawkins. 11 uses her powers to bring Max's body back to life, but her mind is gone somewhere. 2 days later, 11 and the rest of the gang arrive in Hawkins, where they meet up with their friends. Hopper arrives with Joyce, and everyone is finally reunited. However, Will feels that Vecna is still alive somewhere, and at that moment, flakes similar to those in the Upside Down begin to fall from the sky. The main characters climb a hill and see that a portal the size of an entire city has opened in the middle of Hawkins. This is the end of the 4th season. It's been 19 months since the events of the previous season. The government surrounds Hawkins with a fence and seals the rift, covering it with huge steel plates. At the same time, they leave a single passage in the center of the city. It turns out that the military has built a base right in the Upside Down and is experimenting with the local flora and fauna. Dr. K, who is in charge, orders the soldiers to find 11, considering her dangerous. But Hopper and Elle easily evade them, constantly hiding in tunnels that the soldiers don't know about. Steve, Robin, Nancy, and Jonathan work on the radio, coordinating all the main characters' actions along the way. Jonathan wants to marry Nancy, but he can't bring himself to propose to her, and instead gets angry at Steve, still considering him his rival. Dustin hasn't recovered from the loss of his friend Eddie. He starts imitating Eddie's behavior at school, which only gets him into trouble. Other kids beat him up because they think Eddie was involved in what happened 19 months ago. Finally, Lucas spends all day at Max's bedside, who's still in a coma. He keeps playing her favorite music, hoping she'll wake up. All the main characters have joined forces to deal with Vecna once and for all. Hopper makes numerous trips to the Upside Down. He searches it in the hope of finding the villain and killing him, but after 19 months, he has found no trace of him. One day, things don't go according to plan, and for some reason, the Demogorgons appear in the Upside Down, where they haven't been seen for a long time. They force Hopper to change his plan and hide in the Upside Down for a while. At this time, Will telepathically sees the Demogorgon heading for the Wheelers' house. There, it attacks Holly, Mike, and Nancy's younger sister. The monster kidnaps the girl, seriously injuring her mother in the process. Nancy manages to save her mother, while 11 jumps into the open portal to catch up with the Demogorgon. Nancy and Mike realize that their sister Holly's kidnapping may be somehow connected to her recently appeared imaginary friend, nicknamed Mr. Whatsit. From their mother, who has regained consciousness, they learn that his real name was Henry. This means that Vecna is indeed alive. However, it is unclear why he needs Holly. When Will learns about this, he realizes that in his recent vision, he saw not only through the eyes of the Demogorgon, but also through Holly's eyes. It becomes clear that before the kidnapping, Vecna enters the children's minds and watches them for a long time. Will tells the others that the villain's next victim will be a bully named Derek. While the main characters are unable to contact Elle and Hopper, who remain in the Upside Down, they decide to track down Vecna using their own methods. According to the plan, the main characters quietly put Derek's entire family to sleep and transport them to a safe place so that the villain does not realize that a trap is being set. Then they wait for the Demogorgon sent for the boy and stick a tracking device in him to find Vecna's lair. In the end, they succeed, but at that moment Derek wakes up. The villain realizes where he is and sends the Demogorgon there. However, the main characters seriously wound the monster and it flees into the portal. Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and Dustin decide to take advantage of the situation and rush after it into the Upside Down. Will has another vision in which he sees 4 kidnapped children. The boy realizes that Vecna wants to catch 8 more. Meanwhile, Elle finds Hopper in the Upside Down, and they follow the trail of the monster that kidnapped Holly. They end up at the edge of the city, where they discover a wall made of a strange material stretching to unknown heights. Suddenly, soldiers appear, armed with a device that can suppress 11's powers. After a short battle, they manage to defeat the soldiers, and Hopper interrogates Officer Akers. They learn that the military is holding someone with superpowers at their base and realize why the main characters couldn't find Vecna in the Upside Down all this time. Elle suggests that after his loss in the previous season, he has weakened, been captured by the military, and is now being experimented on. The pair decide to sneak into the lab and kill Vecna. But before they do, Nancy, Jonathan, Steve, and Dustin, who have also found the wall, contact them. They suspect that Holly is behind it, as the signal leads there. Meanwhile, Holly finds herself in Henry's house, where the man manipulates the girl. He lies to her, saying that he saved her from the monster and that she is now safe. Henry tells her that he needs to leave for a while and asks Holly not to go far from the house under any circumstances. Soon, the girl finds a strange note from Henry, in which he seemingly asks her to go into the forest. Holly is confused by this request, but decides to go to the specified location anyway. There, she meets Max, who tells her that Henry is actually a villain, and that they are in his mind, specifically in his memories. Meanwhile, Holly's body is somewhere in the Upside Down. Max has been traveling through this maze of memories for a long time, and once even made it to the exit, but the music that Lucas was playing disappeared, and she didn't make it out in time. Vecna appeared and chased her through her memories, but she accidentally found this cave, which he was afraid to enter for some reason. Max asks Holly to go back to the house while she comes up with a plan to get them out of there. The military learns that children of a certain age are disappearing and decides to gather them all at a military base for protection. The main characters realize that the soldiers will not be able to resist Vecna, so they want to steal the children and take them far away from Hawkins. They tell Derek the whole truth, and he surprisingly decides to help them. While the boy is at the military base finds the very children Henry appeared to. The other main characters sneak into the barracks and start to lead them out through the tunnels. However, at that moment, Vecna himself appears with his monsters. He easily deals with the soldiers, kidnaps all 8 children, and sets the Demogorgons on the main characters in different locations. But Will finally realizes that he can not only see through Vecna's eyes, but also control the monsters. So, he saves his friends by breaking all the Demogorgon's bones. Will decides to go further and wants to kill Vecna by unexpectedly getting into his head. Hopper and Eleven sneak into a military base in the Upside Down in hopes of finding Vecna. They knock out the soldiers and open a secret door. However, inside they find Collie. She is the special number 8 girl from Season 2 who escaped from the lab and taught El how to enhance his abilities. Let me remind you that Kaylee can create illusions. The main characters free her and they escape from the base. And Dr. K orders the soldiers to find Eleven at all costs. Soon, Kaylee reveals that the military has been extracting her blood all this time and using it to create children with superpowers. However, none of the babies survived. That is why Dr. K needs Eleven so much. She is a perfect copy of Henry, from whom the other people with superpowers were created in the past. Meanwhile, Hopper says they need to hurry and find the teenagers who are waiting for them at the wall, but when they get there they find no one. It turns out that Dustin did some calculations and realized that a strange wall surrounds the entire city, and the center is the very laboratory where 11 and other special children were kept. Dustin guessed that there is some kind of object there that created these walls. The teenagers decide to go there and destroy it to free Holly. Inside, they split up, and Dustin discovers a secret room with Dr. Brenner's notes. He realizes that the object at the center of the Upside Down is not what they think it is, and rushes to stop his friends. However, it is too late. Nancy and Jonathan find an unknown invisible sphere and shoot at it. This causes the matter around them to melt. They believe they are going to die, and finally confess their deepest feelings to each other. Fortunately, the cataclysm ends and the teenagers escape from the building. During this incident, holes appear in the wall and begin to suck everything around them in. Hopper, El, and Coley witness this. They notice the portal that has appeared and run away to the real world so that they are not sucked in. The kidnapped children wake up in Henry's house, and the man tells them why he has brought them here. It turns out that he wants to unite 2 worlds, one that he has found, where kindness and peace reign, and one populated by people, which he wants to fix in this way. Holly and Derek realize that he is lying. While the boy distracts Henry, Holly goes to Max to find a way out. In the end, the villain realizes what is going on and corners the children. At that moment, Will decides to get into Vecna's head and kill him. Max and Holly run away. However, the villain is too strong to be defeated by Will. He enters the boy's mind and tells him that he chose him in the past for a reason, as well as the new children. Their minds are weak and easy to control. In the past, he gave Will his powers for the sake of an experiment. And now, thanks to him, he knows where Max's body is being held and will send monsters there to kill her. This will lead to her disappearance from his memories. Max and Holly realize which memory will help them escape. They find a mine in the desert. It is where little Henry discovered a crazy scientist trying to save a briefcase. The man almost killed him, but Henry hit him with a rock. Max and Holly don't have time to watch the memory to the end, as they find a passage through which they can finally escape from this place. At that very moment, Vecna sends his monsters to the hospital where Max is. 11 uses her powers to free Will from the villain's clutches. This is how the main characters learn about Max and rush to save her. At the very last moment, Nancy and Mike's mother helps get rid of the monsters by blowing them up. Lucas plays Max's favorite song, and the girl hears it, but also realizes that all this time, Lucas's touch was more important to her than the song. She explains to Holly that she also needs to find something that connects her to the real world. The girls succeed, after which they both jump into the portal. Max finally regains consciousness in our world, but Holly wakes up in an unknown place. She sees the other children unconscious, and Vecna attached to a huge heart. Holly runs outside and realizes she is in some kind of wasteland. She finds a portal under her feet and climbs into it. Then she falls from a great height. However, Vecna pulls her back and puts her back to sleep. With the help of their schoolteacher, Mr. Clark, the remaining main characters create a special device that locates Dustin and the other teenagers in the Upside Down. In the end, everyone is rescued and shares the information they have gathered. The main characters realize that the Upside Down is actually a bridge connecting two dimensions, our world and the so-called Abyss, where 11 threw Henry when she was a kid. He would have stayed there until Dr. Brenner started experimenting with exotic matter. After that, he created a bridge connecting these two worlds. The invisible sphere above the laboratory in the Upside Down supports this bridge, and beyond its walls is emptiness. Vecna now intends to use the children to connect the worlds, plunging the Earth into darkness. The main characters realize that the Abyss is somewhere half a kilometer above the level of the Upside Down, but it is unclear how to get there. Then Steve suggests simply waiting until the villain approaches the Abyss himself, and then using the radio tower to get there. And when they kill Vecna and save the children, they will blow up the sphere. This will lead to the destruction of the Upside Down, and thus the bridge to the Abyss. Will also comes out to everyone as gay, and the main characters support him in this. This gives him strength for the upcoming battle with Vecna. Holly regains consciousness in the villain's house, and the other children beat her up for calling Henry a monster. Then Vecna puts all the children into a trance and begins to carry out his plan, bringing the Abyss closer to our world. The main characters get into a truck, break through the military gate, and enter the Upside Down. Part of the group climbs a radio tower, and when the surface reaches them, they make their way into the Abyss and head for the structure where the children are being held. Meanwhile, Murray, Hopper, 11, and Kaylee sneak into the lab to plant explosives and use the local deprivation chamber so that Elle can fight Vecna on equal terms. 11 and Collie merge with Max's consciousness and distract the villain in his memories. They convince the children that Henry is a villain, and together they run into the cave. But Vecna overcomes himself and goes after them inside. There, we finally see what was in the scientist's briefcase. It is some kind of substance. It possessed the boy, and that is when his connection with the Mind Flayer happened. We learn that the Mind Flayer actually brainwashed little Henry, and as a result they became, roughly speaking, a single entity. At that moment, soldiers burst into the laboratory. Hopper's team manages to fight them off, but the soldiers fatally wound Kali. 11 realizes that the other main characters cannot cope without her in the abyss and goes there. We see the structure where Vecna and the children were located come to life. This is the physical embodiment of the Mind Flayer. All the characters fight him while inside El battles Vecna. In the end, through their combined efforts, they kill him. After that, they free the children and descend with them into the Upside Down. The main characters set a timer on the explosives and leave this cursed place. At the exit, the military was already waiting for them, intent on capturing the 11. However, the girl did not go with them, but remained in Upside Down. It turns out that this was her original plan. After all, as long as she exists, there will be a possibility of restoring the other side. An explosion occurs, and the bridge into the abyss disappears along with the 11. 18 months pass. The teenagers graduate from high school. Lucas and Max stay together. Will moves to New York. Dustin goes to study at a technical university. Mike becomes a writer. Hopper and Joyce decide to get married. Steve, Robin, Nancy, and Jonathan move to different cities, but promise to meet every month. Mike also puts forward his theory about 11. When they left the Upside Down, he noticed that the devices suppressing 11's powers were turned on and she couldn't use them. However, she somehow contacted him before the explosion. It is likely that Kali, in her last breath from the lab, created an illusion that 11 was standing in front of them. Meanwhile, she escaped. This was the only way 11 could convince the military that she was dead, and they would stop looking for her. Whether this is true or not, we will never know. This is the end of the 5th season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.